Hi, I'm Dave Luong, and you're listening to Trek Rant, the Star Trek podcast where I rant, rave, overanalyze, and obsess about all things Trek. This is a quick mini podcast which I'll be doing, which you can find on the United Geek Federation's YouTube page or at our official website, www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite Star Trek villains / antagonists throughout this series. Now, please note that I did say villain / antagonist, and there's a reason for that. Some of the characters who are on my list aren't necessarily villainous in the truest sense, that they're not, quote unquote, evil characters. Some of them on this list are just characters who were basically foils or antagonists to the main protagonist of the Star Trek series. It'll become a little clearer as I go through my list, but that's just the gist of it. I just had to make that distinction. The other thing I just want to mention before I get down to the nitty-gritty and start talking about the choices on my list are that some of the characters who I do list may be surprising to a few of you listeners. So I hope you find this entertaining, and I hope you find this interesting as well. In any case, starting off on my list, one of my favorite villain / antagonist in Star Trek lore is the unnamed Romulan commander from Balance of Terra from the original series episode. Of course, played by Mark Lenard. He was the first major Romulan to appear in Star Trek canon. And this was a great premiere for the Romulans. You could see when Mark Lenard played the Romulan commander, he was playing a character who was proud yet doubtful, bold yet a sad figure, someone who really did believe in the greatness of the Romulan Empire, but who had his doubts about that empire as well. So it's by no means a typical antagonist, typical villain of the time. So it's this really great nuanced performance. That's just one of my favorite showings. I mean, he only appeared in that one episode, but you got this great dynamic between him and Kirk, where they were two sides of the same coin. They're both representatives of their respective people. They're both the best captains, commanders of vessels on their respective sides. They're just fighting on different sides of a conflict, and I think that kind of reflection of Kirk is just so great, and it's a great episode in general. For more on not only that particular character, the unnamed Romulan commander, but the Romulans in general, by the way, I would recommend a terrific comic book that came out a few years ago from IDW Comic Books, Romulans, which was a mini-series, and I believe it was collected in trade paperback as well. That was written and drawn by John Byrne. So I would definitely recommend hunting down that comic book. While I'm at it, I would also recommend some nice also rants who didn't quite make it into my main list, but I did want to mention them, who are also Romulans, because Romulans just make these great antagonists in general. But honorable mention goes out to another unnamed Romulan commander, this one from the Enterprise incidents. Apparently that's a thing. There are a lot of unnamed Romulan commanders in Star Trek the original series, maybe, I don't know. As well as Commander Toreth from the Next Generation episode Face of the Enemy. Great examples of, again, these characters who only appeared in one episode but still managed to put on these great multi-layered performances of characters who, while they believe in the Romulan Empire and believe they're patriots, essentially, they still have room for doubt in their beliefs, and that just adds so much to those characters. Continuing on my list, next I want to mention, and this might surprise a few people, Shinzon from Star Trek Nemesis. Played by, of course, Tom Hardy. Now, I'm not sure why people don't like Nemesis more. It's actually my favorite Next Generation movie, actually probably tied alongside with First Contact, but Nemesis is definitely one of my favorite Next Generation movies. I think I have to do a podcast on that particular movie sometime down the line. For some reason that I don't understand, a lot of people just seem to not like that movie. But in any case, Shinzon, I remember the writers and director before the movie came out, they were talking about how they wanted to create a Khan for Picard, as it were, his equivalent of Khan Noonien Singh, and that was what Shinzon was supposed to be. And I felt that Tom Hardy did a great job fulfilling that role. As Picard's quote-unquote son, his genetic clone, he had this great direct link to Picard, so that when they had scenes together where Shinzon's asking Picard, oh, what does it mean to be a Picard? Were we great warriors? This sort of thing. There's this great connection between the two. Like Picard actually is talking to a family member, which makes it all the more tragic and all the more sad and all the more dramatic when they eventually have to face each other and when they eventually have to fight one another. And you could see that Shinzon is just the ultimate outsider. He's not quite human because he's just a clone. I mean, he's genetically human, but he was created by the Romulans. He's definitely not a Romulan. And he's not even Reman. He's not even the people who he was raised alongside with. So he's such an outsider. So when he's asking Captain Picard, what were the Picards like? Or when he's trying to fit in with the other Remans, or when he's trying to take over the Romulan Empire, you get the sense of this character who's so lost, who wants to find some purpose, whether it's knowing the origin of his own genetics is by asking what a Picard is, or whether it's trying to be more Remanish, out of lack of a better term, by trying to defend the cause of the Remans. You get a sense of a character who just wants so much to find his identity but can't. And that's, again, the great tragedy of the character, is that he can't win no matter what happens. If he goes out to destroy Picard, sure, he'll elongate his own life, but he loses a bit of his history. He loses a bit of his humanity, ironically. And if he doesn't kill Picard, then he's dead. So he's this character that just can't win no matter what happens, and you really feel for him. So Shinzon is definitely one of my favorite villains in Star Trek lore. Next on my list is Kor, the first Klingon played by John Colicos. He was the first Klingon who ever appeared in Star Trek lore, and he appeared in the original series episode Errand of Mercy. Again, much like the unnamed Romulan commander who I mentioned earlier from Balance of Terra, Kor is sort of an anti-Kirk. He believes in the Klingon cause as much as Kirk believes in the Federation. Lines that the differences between him and Kirk, that there aren't really that many outside of a few, what he calls ideological differences, really shows that in Kor's mind, what he's doing isn't evil. It's just him being a patriot. It's him defending the Klingon cause. And that, again, I love those nuanced characters who, they're not just there to twirl a mustache, or not just there to tie the kidnapped girlfriend on the train tracks or anything like cliche like that. I love those characters who are nuanced and who truly believe in their cause. It just adds so much more layer to those particular characters. Kor was such a great character that, of course, he later appeared in DS9, where he was fleshed out further, and where he also got head ridges. I think Kor, John Colicos did a great job of depicting Kor consistently across the original series to his ridge-headed look, where, yes, there are obvious differences between the original series Klingons and the later ridge-headed Klingons, but when John Colicos played Kor, you could still see those differences between those two generations of Klingons, but deep down, it was still Kor. It was still this character who was very proud of being a Klingon, who believed in the cause, who was this great commander, but who still could question authority, and who still found honor and his idea of morals to be his ultimate guiding force. So Kor, definitely one of my favorite villains, definitely one of my favorite antagonists, and of course, definitely one of my favorite Klingon characters. Lastly, on my top favorite villains and antagonists of Star Trek, this one's going to surprise a lot of people. I chose Garth of Azar from the TOS episode Whom Gods Destroy. He was played by, and I hope I'm getting the pronunciation of this name right, Steve Einat, and I could be mispronouncing that, and I do apologize. But in any case, Garth from Whom Gods Destroy is just my absolute favorite villain of all time, in not just TOS, but I think across the entire lore of Star Trek. When you watch that episode, basically Garth is just this wonderfully madcap, deliriously insane character. He literally is crazy, and his plot to just kill Kirk, take over the Enterprise, basically become the king of the universe, is just so insane and so out there that you can't help but love looking at him trying to make this happen. Every time Garth is on screen, you feel the sense that there are times when he's trying to be more villainous and more bold, but then all of a sudden he just goes really insane and he starts getting really manic about everything. Just the way that Steve Einat, and again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, but just the way the actor was able to just raise his voice at certain times, just to change the pitch of his voice during certain things he would say, during certain monologues he was giving, would just make you think, wow, this guy's really crazy. Like, this guy's really crazy. But at the same time, you could see that there's something of the old Starfleet captain still deep inside Garth. So just a wonderful character. And alongside him was, of course, his sidekick, Marta, the Orion slave girl, played by Yvonne Craig. And they just made this wonderfully insane couple together, just the way they interacted with one another and the way they would bounce lines off each other. They were actually, and this is the comparison I like to make, there's a little bit of shades of Harley Quinn and Joker in the relationship between Marta and Garth. It's definitely something to see, and it's definitely one of my favorite original series episodes. And Garth, of course, my absolute favorite villain from Star Trek lore. So just to recap, my favorite villains and antagonists in Star Trek are the unnamed Romulan commander from Balance of Terra, Shinzon from Star Trek Nemesis, Kor from the original series episode Errand of Mercy, and my absolute favorite, Garth of Azar from the TOS episode Whom Gods Destroy. There's a lot of personal preference to that list, obviously, and I probably left out a lot of choices that to other people are the quote-unquote main villains of Star Trek. I did leave out Khan, I did leave out Q, Sela, Guldakat, the Borg Queen, the Duras sisters, etc., etc. So there are a lot of great choices, but those are just four of my personal favorites. Maybe not surprisingly, a lot of the names I did list are characters who didn't show up that much, probably with the exception of Kor, who he wasn't quite a recurring character in DS9, but he appeared in a few episodes. But Garth, Shinzon, and the unnamed Romulan commander are all characters who only appeared once. And again, maybe that's not surprising, because maybe that just left me wanting more. Seeing that one great performance of that actor playing that character just made me love that character. Not being able to see him in anything else, that particular character in anything else, maybe just drew me more to those characters. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking. At any case, this is just one fan's opinion. What do you think? Did I leave out any of your favorite Star Trek villains? Leave a comment on this YouTube page or visit us at our official website at www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com and let me know what you think. Also, please subscribe so you can receive updates on future podcasts, not just this one, but other shows on the United Geek Federation channel. I'm David Luong. Thanks for listening to Trek Rant.